Do you admit to being evil, Richard?
We are all evil in some form or another, are we not?
I've met a lot of men who were motivated to commit violence just like me. Every one of them was deeply involved in pornography without question.
Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
What do you think about the words they just said? Were those confessions honest, or were they simply the distorted thoughts of minds unlike any other? If you're drawn to stories like these, stories of darkness, fear, and the human monsters that once walked among us, then you're in the right place. Subscribe for weekly deep dives into real horror and true mysteries told through a grounded, immersive perspective. And tonight, we're exploring the list of the most dangerous serial killers the world has ever known. Ted Bundy, the charming monster. He looked normal, he acted normal, but behind that smile, Ted Bundy was hunting. And for years, nobody realized they were staring at one of the most dangerous predators in American history. It is uncertain how many people Ted Bundy killed. He confessed to 30 murders, though the number is thought to be much higher. Some have speculated that he killed as many as 100 women. Bundy was clean-cut, educated, and charming. A law student, the kind of man people trusted instantly. Bundy's method was simple. He used a fake cast, a sling, or crutches. He'd ask for help loading books into his car, and the moment a woman stepped close, he attacked with brutal precision. His charm wasn't just a disguise. It was the weapon. In 1974, at Lake Sammamish, he kidnapped 2 women in broad daylight in the middle of a crowded park. Witnesses heard his name, they saw his face. They even described his car. Bundy was eventually caught, but even jail couldn't hold him. He escaped twice. Once by leaping from a courthouse window, and once by squeezing through a hole in the ceiling after starving himself thin. He didn't disappear. He went to Florida and unleashed his most violent attack inside the Chi Omega sorority house. It was chaos, fear, and brutality all in minutes. Bundy wasn't killing to survive. He was killing because he wanted to. On January 24, 1989, Ted Bundy was executed. Crowds gathered outside the prison, celebrating his death. Some held signs, some cheered as the power surged through the electric chair. And this was Ted Bundy, one of the most charming and deadliest predators in American history. But if you think this was terrifying, wait until you meet the next one. A killer who didn't pretend to be normal, a killer who kept trophies and filmed the darkness inside his own apartment. Jeffrey Dahmer, the Milwaukee cannibal. To his neighbors, Dahmer seemed quiet. Strange, maybe, but harmless, a man who kept to himself in a small Milwaukee apartment. No one knew the truth, the smell coming from his unit wasn't spoiled meat, and the strange noises weren't broken appliances. Inside apartment 113, Dahmer was building a personal cemetery. Dahmer's victims were young men he met at bars, bus stops, or malls. He lured them home with promises, drinks, money, or just company. But once the door closed, Dahmer drugged them. And after taking their lives, he kept their remains, bones, organs, photographs as trophies. He didn't kill for rage. He killed to keep people from leaving him a twisted mind. Desperate for control. Everything changed on July 22, 1991. A man escaped Dahmer's apartment, drugged, terrified, handcuffed. He managed to flag down 2 police officers. When the officers entered Dahmer's home, they expected another simple disturbance. Instead, they found a nightmare. Polaroids of dismembered bodies, skulls in the freezer, and a drum filled with acid. It was beyond anything a detective could prepare for. Unlike most serial killers, Dahmer confessed everything. Calmly, clearly, as if explaining a routine. He detailed how he preserved bodies, how he cooked certain parts, and how he tried to create living zombies he could control. There was no insanity plea, no dramatic denial. Just a man describing his horrors. In 1992, Dahmer was sentenced to 15 life terms in prison, but he wouldn't serve them all. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by another inmate in a prison bathroom. No fanfare, no final words, just a violent end to a violent life. Next, we look at a killer who hid behind balloons, makeup, and a painted smile. John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. He entertained children. He volunteered at community events. He wore a clown suit and painted a smile. But behind that smile was one of the deadliest serial killers in American history. To everyone around him, Gacy was a model citizen, a business owner, a friendly neighbor, a man who dressed as Pogo the Clown to bring joy to kids' parties. But behind the walls of his home in Illinois, something far darker was happening. Young men were disappearing, dozens of them, and nobody suspected the man who hosted barbecues and shook hands with politicians. Gacy targeted teenage boys and young men looking for work or opportunity. He offered them jobs, money, or a place to stay. Once inside his house, he used handcuffs, ropes, and a trick he called the rope act. It wasn't magic, it was murder. And after taking their lives, he buried many of them just feet below where he slept in the crawl space beneath his home. But the truth began to surface in 1978, when a teenager named Robert Piest vanished after mentioning he had a job interview with Gacy. Police searched Gacy's home, and what they found was a nightmare. Evidence everywhere, and beneath the house, a mass grave, bodies stacked one after another in the crawl space. The final number shocked the nation, 33 victims. Gacy confessed with chilling calmness, claiming at one point that clowns can get away with anything. In 1994, after years on death row, Gacy was executed by lethal injection. His final words were simple: "Kiss my ass." Even in his last moments, he showed no remorse, no guilt, only arrogance. The smiling killer who hid behind a clown suit. But the next serial killer didn't need a mask. He carried pure darkness in his eyes and left pentagrams at the scene of his crimes. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Richard Ramirez did not grow up in a normal childhood. He was surrounded by violence, drugs, and disturbing influences from a very young age. One of the strongest influences was his cousin, a former soldier who showed him graphic photos of torture and murder during wartime. These moments planted seeds of darkness inside Ramirez, seeds that would grow into something monstrous. In 1984, Los Angeles would face a terror it had never seen before. Ramirez didn't have a pattern. He didn't choose victims based on age, gender, or lifestyle. He targeted anyone, young, old, men, women, families. He would break into homes at night, armed with knives or guns, attacking his victims brutally. What made Ramirez particularly disturbing was his obsession with the occult. At crime scenes, he left behind symbols, messages, and horrifying acts that suggested he believed he was serving something darker. Some victims reported hearing him whisper, "Hail Satan." These weren't just murders, they were rituals. He didn't care about silence. He didn't care about evidence. Every attack felt random. And every night felt like the Night Stalker could strike again. His downfall came from one mistake, a fingerprint. Detectives matched it to a man already in the criminal system, Richard Ramirez. His face appeared on every newspaper and television broadcast. And when he tried to flee through East Los Angeles, ordinary citizens recognized him. A group of residents chased him down, tackled him, and held him until police arrived. Richard Ramirez showed the world how a single man can turn an entire city into a nightmare. A predator without pattern, without remorse, and without fear. Ramirez was convicted of 13 murders, though many believe the true number is higher. He received the death penalty, but died in prison in 2013 while awaiting execution. But he wasn't alone in shaping America's darkest history. There are killers far more methodical, more precise, and far colder than the Night Stalker. Aileen Wuornos, the damaged heart of a killer. She wasn't like the others. Not a shadow in the night. Not a masked killer lurking in silence. She was loud, angry, broken, and she became one of America's most infamous female serial killers. Aileen Wuornos never had a chance at a normal life. Abandoned by her parents, raised by abusive grandparents, and forced to survive on the streets. Her childhood was defined by cruelty. By the time she was a teenager, she was homeless, alone, and already exchanging favors for food and shelter. Every injury, every betrayal, hardened her into someone who trusted no one. But pain was shaping something darker inside her, a rage she never learned to control. In late 1989, the first body appeared. A man named Richard Mallory, found shot multiple times. Aileen claimed it was self-defense that he attacked her, and she fought back. But soon, more victims followed. David Spears, Charles Kerskaden, Peter Seams, and others. All men, all found shot with the same weapon. Aileen insisted she killed only to protect herself, that every man she shot was violent toward her, but investigators saw something different: robbery, stolen cars, personal belongings taken from victims. In January 1991, Aileen Wuornos was arrested after police identified a stolen vehicle linked to one of her victims. When confronted, she didn't deny her actions. In fact, she confessed openly, almost coldly. She said, "I'd do it again. I'm sick of being pushed around." Aileen was sentenced to death. On October 9, 2002, she was executed by lethal injection. In her final words, she promised she would return with Jesus and come back to Earth someday. Aileen Wuornos became a symbol of violence born from pain, a product of a life filled with abandonment, abuse, and rage. These were some of the most dangerous minds America has ever known. Killers who hid behind charm, routines, and ordinary lives. If you want more true crime stories told from a real, unfiltered perspective, subscribe and see you in the next case.